This is Ralph Sass. This is Accounting 212, and I'm going to be going over the quizzes and showing you how to calculate the correct answers only for the problems that have numbers, what have you. So this will only be for those problems that have numbers. The first one that had numbers, and a quick note about how I always do multiple choice questions. I always go to the end. Okay, and the reason why I go to the end is to find out what the question is asking, because then I can focus on the data in the question that's going to help me answer the question. Because sometimes some of the data is not going to be of much use. So by going to the end of the question, it says, assuming this activity is within the relevant range, what's the expected cost for 17,300 machine hours? So what I need to do is find out, is this a fixed cost? Is it a mixed cost? Or is it a variable cost? And so by isolating which of those types of costs it is, I can go ahead and calculate it. Keep in mind, if it's a variable cost, we might have to do, or pardon me, if it's a mixed cost, we may have to do a regression analysis or something to figure it out. But notice in this case we don't. The first thing it says is, notice that at 20,000 machine hours, the average cost is 40 cents per minute. So what that is telling me is that the total cost is $8,000, because the average is 40 cents. I don't know how much it costs, but I know that the activity level was 20,000. So if I solve that, I get that X is 8,000. So I know that the cost is $8,000 at 20,000 units. But notice what happens at 16,000. If I go ahead and solve the equation for 16,000 equals, and the average cost is 50 cents an hour, okay, and I solve for X, it's also $8,000. So what that's telling me is that this is a fixed cost. The fixed cost is $8,000. The correct answer is right there at $8,000. And the reason why the average, okay, is going down is because what happens to fixed costs is, as the output goes up, the cost per unit goes down. Remember, fixed costs are fixed in total and variable per unit. So it's telling me it's a fixed cost with an $8,000 cost. The second question, and this is really a good example of a mixed cost, or what a mixed cost could look like. Notice in this particular case, there's a cost formula that's 30 grand plus 5 times X. Okay. Question is what's going to be the cost at 16,000 units? The reason why this is a mixed cost is it's got a fixed cost portion of 30 grand and a variable portion at $5. So with that being said, all I need to do is take 30 grand, add to that $5 times 16 grand. Okay, that's 80 grand, 80,000. Add to that the 30, and I get the answer is 110. So that's how I do the second. The third of the math questions, and I apologize, in a couple of these it's hard to read sometimes the table here. It's the company information. Once again, I'm going to go to the end and say I'm looking for the gross margin. Okay, gross margin means that I'm going to take sales minus cost of goods sold to get gross margin. Okay, that's my formula, and then after that I'm going to subtract my SG&A, selling, general, and administrative, to get my net income. I don't have to go that far in this question, but that's what I need to do. So starting at the top, my sales are 700 grand. Okay, now it didn't tell me my cost of goods sold, so I'm going to have to figure that out. That's going to consist of 3 parts. Okay, it's going to cost of the fixed cost of goods sold, which is 100 grand. Okay, that's the fixed cost. It's going to consist of the variable cost of goods sold, which is $220. Okay, so there's my fixed and variable. I don't have to yet worry about things like manufacturing overhead, so those are the two items that I have to subtract. So I've got 700,000 minus 320,000. That leaves me with 380 grand, and the correct answer is 380 grand. And finally, the last question for Chapter 1 is asking for the contribution margin. Whoops. It's asking for the contribution margin. So now I'm going to take sales minus variable costs equals my contribution margin minus my fixed cost, and that'll give me my net income. So my sales are once again still 700 grand. Okay, now I need to subtract all my variable costs. So coming down, first variable expense I'm going to come to is variable administration. That's going to get included. Notice it doesn't just include the product costs. Variable cost of goods sold is $220. Okay, and variable selling expense is $170. So I've got 700 minus, that's 250, 320 minus 420. It's going to subtract 420 grand. So I've got 700 grand minus 420 grand, and that gives me a total, and I don't have my answers here, but my answer is 280 grand. That concludes the math for the quiz on Chapter 1. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. Thank you.